The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. Wealth without working harder. Naval Ravikant is one of the most successful investors of his generation, but he became famous for something else. He wrote a thread on social media titled, "How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky." That thread spread across the internet, sparked thousands of essays, and was eventually compiled into a book by Eric Jorgensen. The book has now sold over 1 million copies, and it offers a strange new model of wealth that does not depend on working harder than everyone else. If you have spent years grinding for money and wondering why the math never seems to work, this book is a small revolution in your hands. Naval argues that working harder will never make you wealthy in the way you actually want. The world rewards effort, but it pays far more for leverage, judgment, and ownership. Understanding the difference is the entire game, and most people never see it because nobody around them is playing it. Here is the first idea you need to lock in. Naval distinguishes between 3 kinds of work: renting your time, owning equity, and building leverage. Most people only ever rent their time. They trade hours for money. That trade has a ceiling because there are only so many hours in a week. Owning equity changes the equation. When you own a piece of something that grows while you sleep, the ceiling disappears. You should understand why this matters in 2026 specifically. The tools to own something that scales without your direct effort have never been more available. Software businesses run themselves. Content lives online forever. Investments compound across decades. Naval was writing about this years before it became common knowledge, and his core insight is now part of the way younger generations think about careers. The shift from time for money to ownership of leverage is one of the biggest economic changes of the modern era. Stay with this, because Naval introduces a specific kind of leverage that almost nobody talks about correctly. He calls it permissionless leverage. The old forms of leverage required other people's permission. You needed investors to give you money. You needed employees to do work for you. Both kinds work, but they have limits. The new forms, code and content, require no permission. You can write software once and serve 1 million people. You can record a video once and reach an audience forever. That is the kind of leverage Naval wants you to chase. Now think about what this looks like in your own life. If you are a teacher, the time for money version is 1 classroom. The leverage version is a course that reaches thousands. If you are a writer, the time for money version is 1 client. The leverage version is a book or a newsletter that compounds for decades. The work itself does not have to change much. The way it is packaged and distributed is everything. Here is another idea worth sitting with. Naval argues that you should aim to be paid for your judgment, not your time. People who get paid for judgment include investors, advisors, founders, and anyone who makes important decisions. People who get paid for time include almost everyone else. The shift from one column to the other often takes years, but it begins with a recognition that your decisions are worth more than your hours, even when nobody around you is willing to admit it. You should also know about his idea of specific knowledge. Naval defines this as knowledge you cannot be trained for. It comes from your curiosity, your obsession, your particular blend of skills and interests. Specific knowledge cannot be taught in schools, because if it could, somebody else would already be doing it. The most valuable people in any field are the ones who have built specific knowledge that nobody else has, and that knowledge usually emerges from following genuine interest rather than chasing job descriptions. Stay with this, because the specific knowledge idea changes how you should think about your career. Most people pick a career based on what pays well. Naval argues that you should pick based on what you cannot stop thinking about, then find a way to make that interest pay. The reason is simple. Generic skills are commoditized. Anyone can be trained in them. Specific knowledge is rare, and rare things command premium prices in any market. Now consider how Naval thinks about money itself. He does not see money as the goal. He sees it as a tool for buying back your time. The whole point of wealth, in his view, is not to consume more, but to control more of your own hours. Once you have enough money that your time belongs to you, what you do with that freedom is the real measure of your life. Most rich people miss this and stay trapped in the same grind that made them rich. Here is something else worth knowing about him. Naval has a deep philosophical streak that runs through the book. He reads ancient Stoics, Eastern philosophy, and modern science. He argues that wealth without peace is worthless, and that peace cannot be bought. It has to be built through habits of mind, meditation, reading, solitude. The book moves smoothly between investment advice and spiritual practice because Naval refuses to separate them. And many readers find this combination is what makes the book stick. You should also understand his views on reputation. Naval calls reputation a form of leverage that compounds across decades. Every time you keep a promise, every time you do good work, every time you treat people fairly, your reputation grows quietly in the background. Years later, opportunities arrive because of work you did long ago. Reputation cannot be faked, and it cannot be rushed. It is the slowest form of leverage, but it is also one of the most reliable, especially in a connected world where information moves fast. Stay with this, because Naval makes a strong case for playing long games. He argues that almost everything valuable in life comes from being in the right game for long enough. Long-term relationships, long-term skills, long-term investments. The people who win in any field are usually the ones who showed up consistently for years before anyone noticed. Most people switch games too often and wonder why the results never compound. Now think about your own pattern. How many serious things have you started in the last 5 years? How many have you stayed with long enough to see real results? Naval would tell you that the answer to those two questions probably explains where you are right now. The fix is not to start something new. The fix is to commit deeper to something that is already in front of you. Here's the closing idea on this book. Naval offers a way of looking at work, money, and life that is quieter than the usual hustle advice. He is not telling you to grind harder. He is telling you to think harder about what kind of game you are playing, what kind of leverage you are building, and what kind of person you are becoming while you do it. The point is not to be rich. The point is to be free. You should also know about one of his lesser-quoted ideas. Naval writes about happiness as a skill rather than a destination. He argues that happiness is not something you achieve by hitting a milestone. It is a state of mind you train through daily practice. Meditation, exercise, healthy relationships, and a refusal to take yourself too seriously all feed into it. People who treat happiness as a goal to chase tend to miss it forever. People who treat it as a habit to practice tend to find it almost by accident. And Naval is one of the clearest voices making this case in the modern world. Now consider how this connects to everything else in the book. The whole point of building wealth, in Naval's view, is to remove the friction that keeps you from being happy. Money buys time. Time buys freedom. Freedom buys the space to develop the habits that actually produce a peaceful life. If you skip the inner work and only chase the money, you end up rich and miserable, which is one of the most common stories in any successful field. The Almanack is a quiet warning against that outcome. If you only take one thing from this summary, take this. Wealth comes from ownership, leverage, and judgment, not from effort. Build something that grows while you sleep. Find specific knowledge that nobody can take from you. Play long games with people you trust. The rest tends to take care of itself.